Everyone, I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Mary Beth LeBate, State Budget Director, and the Governor has designated me to be chair of today's meeting, and I'd also like to introduce Bill Morrow, Secretary to the Governor. I'd like to take note that we have a few public observers, Doreen and Sarah, observing for Senate Majority Leader John Flanagan, Mark Wurzel, observing for City Council Minority Leader Stephen Mateo, and Jay Lifton, observing for Assembly Minority Leader Brian Kolb. They're here with us today. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last annual board meeting, which was held on July 29th, 2014. These minutes were previously distributed for comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Next item on the agenda is the financial plan for fiscal year 2016 through 2019. Mr. Mayor, I understand that you will present the city's four-year plan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair LeBate. Thank you for the work you do on behalf of the people of New York State. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you on a regular basis. I want to acknowledge and thank the members of this board for all they do for the city and for the state. Especially like to single out Comptroller Tom DiNapoli and Comptroller Scott Stringer, both of whom are crucial partners in all we do and who we are in constant touch with. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you, of course, to Jeff Hallis, John Levin, and Lawrence Golub, and to the Executive Director, Jeffrey Summer, for the work that you do as part of this body. I want to give you today a broad accounting of the City of New York's financial health, which I'm glad to say is very strong. Since I last appeared before you, my administration has deepened its commitment to a progressive, honest, and responsible stewardship of the city's finances, rolling out a full slate of investments to create a stronger and more resilient and more equitable city, while taking what we think are truly innovative measures to protect our long-term fiscal health. I say this not as a slogan, I say this as a literal fact. Fiscal prudence underpins every decision we make. It's the foundation of our fiscal 16 budget, developed and adopted in true partnership with the New York City Council, which worked with us in an atmosphere of openness and transparency, and I'm proud to say we delivered not only a strong budget, but an on-time, in fact, an early budget. I want to thank the members of my team who played such a crucial role in this process. Our first Deputy Mayor, Tony Shorus, my Budget Director, Dean Fullahan, and our Commissioner for the Office of Labor Relations, Bob Lynn, all of whom did, I think, an exemplary job. The fiscal 16 budget reflects our values and vision for the city, as well as the complex and critical moment in which we find ourselves. There are many indicators, and by the way, I should hasten to add, what I'm saying here mirrors a lot of what I said at the preliminary budget presentation and at our executive budget presentation earlier in the year. There are many indicators that show how the city's economy at large has recovered from the Great Recession. Yet, a tremendous number of people in this city have not recovered. The number I've used many times still holds true. Nearly 46% of all New Yorkers are living at or near the poverty level. More than 500,000 New Yorkers are either unemployed, working part-time while searching for full-time work, or looking for work and not finding it at all. And the cost of living continues to strain our families. In 2014, over half of renters in New York City were rent burdened, meaning they spent more than 30% of their income on housing. This all come together into an unprecedented situation during this recovery, and I think it's fair to say in the cases that I'm talking about, so-called recovery, poverty continues to grow. There were 186,000 more New Yorkers below the federal poverty level in 2013 than there were in 2009. So literally during the time frame that we believe this recovery to be happening in, a huge number of people have slipped into poverty, which is the reverse of what we saw in previous recoveries. The inequality I'm describing inhibits a thriving and prosperous future for the city, not simply for the people who make up the city, but for the city as a whole. So you'll see in our budget the fact that we're using every power and deploying every tool and making every investment we think prudent to address these issues, while always remaining attuned to the need to be fiscally responsible and paying close attention to shifts in the economic climate. In that vein, we are extremely attentive to signs of concern on the horizon. One crucial example, U.S. GDP growth of 2.1% in the context of this recovery makes it the second lowest of the 12 recoveries since World War II. So we think that is one of many troublesome statistics that suggest we must brace ourselves for a downturn. No one can predict what's to come, and it is that very uncertainty against which we are fortifying ourselves. We've taken extraordinary steps to cut costs, to build up our reserves, to reduce our risks, and to make realistic forecasts. When this administration took office, we immediately began to remedy perhaps the most urgent fiscal situation we faced, which is the fact that we had literally none of our workforce under contract. We quickly and respectfully, working closely with those who represent our employees, changed that situation. We have now come to terms with over 80% of our workforce and the unions that represent them. By securing both civilian and uniform labor patterns, we purged a great deal of uncertainty from the city's budget. And this has protected all New Yorkers, allowing us a powerful measure of control in an otherwise uncertain economic landscape. These responsible labor settlements, developed in partnership with our employees, provide fair raises to the men and women who keep the city running, and they've enabled us to set unprecedented health care savings goals, fundamentally bending the health care cost curve for the city. These are not pie-in-the-sky targets, as our most recently quarterly healthcare savings report indicates. Labor settlements have already resulted in a $400 million reduction in healthcare costs for fiscal 15. I'm proud to say we are on track to meet our next goal of $700 million saved in fiscal 16, and we are confident we will ultimately achieve our commitment of $3.4 billion saved in total through fiscal 19. These savings factor into a truly honest budgeting process. It takes a frank and cautious approach to revenue and expense forecast and drives us to continually reduce our already manageable out-year gaps, ensuring that they're realistic, and it helps us to clock in at a much lower than the historical average level. We are also taking complementary and unprecedented action to build up the necessary resources to contend with a downturn. First, by raising the general reserve, the city's precautionary savings for expenses, to $1 billion annually, and that is true throughout the life of our financial plan over these next years. Second, by raising the Retiree Health Benefits Trust Fund to $3.3 billion. Third, by creating the first ever capital stabilization reserve of $500 million, protecting our ability to keep the infrastructure of the city in good repair and allowing us to lay the foundation for growth. We've made tremendous strides towards creating a more efficient government that performs at the highest level while providing real savings to our budget. In addition to the healthcare savings already discussed, agency savings will reduce expenses by $530 million in fiscal 15 and 16. When factoring in an additional $400 million in debt savings, we stand to save nearly $1 billion in those 2 years. And we continue to work with our agencies on a savings plan that boosts reserves further and keeps our future budgets in balance. All of these measures have led the rating agencies to affirm our strong, stable ratings from last year and to cite our prudent management of the city's finances. Now, these efforts to strengthen the city's economic position are deeply connected to the work we do every day to build a New York that is stronger and more resilient and fairer for everyone. Our budget reflects this through targeted investments as outlined in our blueprint for the future of the city, One NYC. We followed through on commitments from last year, for example, investing approximately $295 million in fiscal 15 and $443 million in fiscal 16 to make sure that more than 70,000 four-year-olds can expect full-day, high-quality pre-K beginning next month. Second, we're investing $618 million in fiscal 15 we've invested in fiscal 15 $618 million to finance over 20,300 affordable apartments, placing us squarely on track to meet our goal of 200,000 affordable apartments by 2025. We're also making a host of new investments, $165 million in fiscal 16 to transform our underperforming schools into places where parents, teachers, and community all bring resources to bear to change the lives of our children. $170 million in investments in fiscal 16 to give the NYPD the tools and strategies it needs to be safe, to draw closer to the communities it serves, and to continue to maintain the city's historically low crime levels. And significant capital investments to urgently combat climate change and mitigate its effects by reducing the city's carbon footprint by 80% by the year 2050. That includes more than $1 billion in capital investments to retrofit all public buildings in the next 10 years, which will also ultimately yield major cost savings on the expense side. In conclusion, we all know by law New York City must balance its budget each year, and we've done that. But in a larger sense, too, this is a budget predicated on the notion of balance. We know, and we're demonstrating, that progressive change and financial prudence can and must go hand in hand. This has driven a budget of bold ideas and commitments, made with a clear-eyed assessment of the possible and the prudent. It reflects the sacred trust that is always placed in those who are honored with the leadership of this city. It's our obligation to set a course and chart a route forward that will lift up each of the more than 8.4 million people who live here, while always preparing for whatever economic winds may blow our way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Controller DiNapoli, do you have any comments on the city's financial plan?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman LeBate, and thank you, Mayor de Blasio, for your report to the board. I'm joined by Deputy Controller from New York City, Ken Bleiweiss. Ken and his team prepared the State Controller's report on the city's financial plan that was released today. I'd like to offer the following comments for the record. 4 years ago, New York City was in the early stages of its recovery from the Great Recession. At that time, the city was projecting a budget gap of $4.9 billion for fiscal year 2015 and was drawing down its reserves. In addition, nearly all of the city's labor agreements had expired. Much has changed since then. Over the past year, the city has reached new labor agreements with 80% of its workforce and is working cooperatively with its unions to hold down the growth in health insurance costs. These agreements provide cost certainty through 2018. The city's economy added a record 120,000 jobs during calendar year 2014 and is on track to add more than 100,000 jobs during 2015. Since 2009, the city has added more than 500,000 jobs, 4 times as many as were lost during the recession. Many of these jobs are concentrated in lower-wage employment sectors, but business services, tech, and Wall Street are also adding jobs at this time. The unemployment rate has fallen to 6.1%, the lowest level in nearly 7 years, although still higher than the pre-recession level. Last year, tax collections reached a record $51.7 billion, 33% higher than the pre-recession peak. In fact, collections were $3.1 billion higher than the city's forecast at the beginning of the year. Even after contributing $955 million to the Retirees Health Benefit Trust, the city was still left with a $3.6 billion surplus in 2015. The surplus was used by the city to increase its reserves and to help balance the 2016 budget. Over the years, the city's conservative approach to forecasting tax revenues has served it well, helping to close projected budget gaps and cushioning the impact of adverse developments. The current 4-year financial plan continues this practice. For fiscal year 2016, the city forecasts only a small increase in tax revenues, even though the economy continues to grow at a steady pace. While tax collections are likely to be higher than projected by the city under current economic conditions, there is the possibility of an economic setback during the financial plan period. The city has experienced 5 years of job growth, and the city's financial plan assumes uninterrupted job growth for another 5 years. That would be the longest job expansion in 60 years. While the economy shows no signs of weakening, changes in the business cycle are inevitable. External events such as international developments and changes in federal monetary policy could impact the city's economy. The city has prudently increased its reserves to hedge against a budgetary setback. It has increased the general reserve to $1 billion, 10 times more than the statutory minimum and the largest amount ever. It has also set aside $500 million in a newly created capital stabilization reserve. In addition, the city added $1.8 billion to the Retiree Health Benefits Trust during the past 2 years. The trust was established to help fund post-employment benefits other than pensions, though the trust has been used in the past as a rainy day fund. The city's contributions raised the balance in the trust to $3.3 billion, the largest amount ever. This is a very significant development, though it has to be considered in the context of the unfunded OPEB liability totals $89.5 billion. As we've heard from the mayor, the city has made targeted investments in education, public safety, and other programs. These investments increased agency spending by nearly $1.6 billion annually. The city has also outlined an ambitious 10-year capital strategy totaling $83.8 billion through 2025. Debt service would reach $7.5 billion by 2019 and would account for 13.4% of tax revenue in that year. Even with new labor agreements and higher agency and capital spending, the city projects smaller budget gaps for fiscal years 2017 and 2018 than were anticipated 1 year ago. The city projects budget gaps of $1.5 billion in 2017, $1.9 billion in 2018, and a gap of $2.9 billion in 2019. As I mentioned earlier, the budgets for these years include a general reserve of $1 billion. If unneeded, the reserve could be used to help close the projected